Okay, we're back. So one of the things that we're going to look at today is Photoshop and how Photoshop deals with imagery. And why is Photoshop different than Illustrator? And how is it different than Flash? And what's really important is to begin to understand how they can be integrated to come up with professional projects. And I think too, when you see what they do differently, you can also think in terms of collaboration about splitting the workload up, to best meet the talents or the interests of the student, kind of covering that part. So I think of Illustrator as being a great, layout tool. I think that there's just, I don't know, I'm hard pressed to think of anything that's better than Illustrator. Illustrator is a vector program. I'm going to jump over to Illustrator really quickly just to prove the point of what I'm talking about here. So we can see that this is a vector map. I'm in Illustrator right now. These are all vectors. I can size this up. And as you can see, I don't lose any image quality when I size this thing up. Really retains the image quality. So that's very important. Illustrator is also just awesome for doing quick layouts, understanding how things are going to lay out on a grid, etc., etc. So it's very, very good for that. Love it for layout. I'm going to quit Illustrator right now. We won't go into Illustrator again, but I want to show you sort of the difference. When we go into Photoshop, let's take these off one at a time. What we end up with, we can deal with vector imagery in Photoshop, but mostly Photoshop is intended for full color, 24 or 32-bit artwork. And how we put that artwork together, how we overlay that artwork is really the most important part. How do we get these soft blended edges where one image kind of blends into another image and looks very natural. The natural qualities of the art are very, very important. So, all right. So as you can see here, we have a series of layers, and each of these layers. Let's turn these off and let's kind of see how these layers appear. So I have this layer, which is, if I take everything off, I can hardly see it. So this layer is actually a piece of artwork. Let me see if I can find the piece of art and I can show it to you. Let's see, I think it might be this one. Nope, not that one, but I think I do see the one that it is. Trail of Tears painting. So this is actually the painting. And so how did I bring that into the other picture? So select all or Command A allows you to do surround the image, and then Command C or edit copy allows me to copy that image. And then simply I come over here and I say paste. Now there's a couple of different ways you can paste. You can paste in place, which puts it exactly where you took it from, or you can just do a paste and then decide where it goes after. I'm going to turn off the this one that's under. This is the original that I've already treated. But now that I have this image laying above, I can move it around. I'm just grabbing the selection tool here and I'm moving it around. If I wanted to resize, then I would simply come into Edit, Free Transform. In the Free Transform mode, I can see that this is a very big image. So I'm going to grab one of the side toggles here, and I know that I've grabbed it once I get this, once the cursor turns to these two arrows that are going in different directions. Then I can size it down, figure out where I want to put it, size it back up again. Okay, pretty straightforward. Let's say I'm going to go ahead and apply that now. And again, everything is pretty much retaining the image quality. Let's say that I wanted to chop out this part of the sky, all this blue sky for some reason. I just wanted to get rid of it. So first thing I'm going to do is just take a polygonal shape. I'm going to just take this rectangle. I'll get rid of it just by clicking delete. Now I still have this irregular area here. So this is where I'm going to use my, my point sampler. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can do magic wand, or you can do quick selection. We'll do, actually, let's do quick selection tool. That should be good. Now what that does is that allows me to come in and, you know, just add to, sort of click areas to sample and add to the sample. Now this is going to be tricky coming right here because the value is fairly similar. So I'm just going to go ahead all the way down here, and then I'm going to come back and look at the problem areas. Like this whole thing right here is a problem area because it's taken not only the sky as a selection, but it's taken part of the mountain. So what I want to do is I want to come up to this selection tool and I want to subtract from my selection. But what I want to do now is sample a smaller area so I'm not getting everything. So now I'm going to come up, and you see now how my selection is changing slightly. Okay, so I'm sampling a smaller area and I'm subtracting from the selection. All right. Oop, let's do it over here too. So I think part of image compositing is understanding the selection tool. I think it's really, really vital to understand how that works. So at this point, I could just cut it, which would be fine. I can do like this, delete, boom, it's gone. But let's see what happens. All right, not too bad. But let's come back. Let's undo that selection for a second, or undo that, that deletion. And what I want to do is I want to show something called refine edge, because this is really the thing that makes the difference between a really, really well composited image and one that's not so well. So the key with image compositing is paying attention to the edges and what they're doing. So in refine edge, I can come in and I can shift the edge of the thing that I'm working with. So as you can see, it's kind of hard to see here. I can see it on my monitor, but what this is doing is it's shifting the edge in just a little bit. And then the other thing you can do that's kind of fun is you can actually feather the edge. And so that feathered edge will give you sort of just a kind of a little bit, tiny bit of blur just right on the edge. And you can say, how many pixels do I want to have a little blur? Maybe 1.5 pixels. This is really, really useful for when you're doing things like hair, like you're matting hair, for example, into a background. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll accept that. Now, when I delete that, you'll see that there's actually, I ended up taking some stuff there too. I would go back and undo that, but I won't worry about that for right now. But what you see here is kind of an edge that's got a little bit of a softness to it. All right, so now the next question is, how does this picture lay over this background? So how is this picture laying over the thing below it? Well, because there's nothing turned on underneath it, this guy is not turned on because I've turned that off. What I can do is come up here, and I have these different options for selecting the way that I want things to appear on top. So this, for example, says I want to fool around a little bit with you know, how this is going to look. I happen to really like the color burn. That sort of takes the color behind and the color that's in here and merges them. Darken is taking you know, the dark colors and overlaying those. Lighten is taking the light colors. There's just so much that you can do if you really play around with these. Overlay is just taking an overlay. It's just kind of reducing the overall opacity. Soft light is really nice. Again, it's like an overlay, but it applies a softness to it. And on you go. Luminosity is sometimes kind of a fun thing to play with too. I get so much use out of these menus. I just love them. Okay, so I want to go back though to this color burn. I'm kind of fascinated with that because this is giving me sort of a rich reddish color. And what I want to do is decrease the opacity now a little bit. So now I can see that I can clearly see what's happening there, but it's opaque or it's transparent enough that I can lay things on top of it without distracting. If this was too detailed and too noisy in the background, it would be distracting, and I don't want to do that. Now, the next thing we're going to look at are these baskets. How did I overlay these baskets? Let's go get the basket thing here called Little Baskets. And we're going to use, what do you think? If you said the quick selection tool, you are right. I'm going to increase the size of the sampling size a little bit because I can tell right now that the color of the background is fairly different than the color in the foreground. And so that's important because that'll let me do this kind of rapidly. Like, for example, as I'm selecting these, what's really cool is that there's, this kind of grayish color is not within the image itself. Now there's a little mistake there, so let's undo that. Remember, you can always undo. Yeah, so I'm going to have to come back because that's a problem area we'll come back to in a second. So let's keep on going around. And then eventually you can do this thing called similar. Let's see what similar does. So similar sometimes is good, sometimes not. In this case, it's taking too much of some other stuff that I don't want it to take. So I'm just going to kind of keep on working around here, working around. And see, like right here, I don't want it to work into that area. So I'm going to do undo that. And I'm going to take the size now of the sampling wand down a little bit. Ooh, and it's still going over that. Okay. So in this case now I'm going to do the minus, and with the minus I'm going to bring this back out again. Okay, so hopefully this is kind of making sense to people a little bit. All right, something like that. And again, you can zoom this in, like you can get super detailed. You can zoom in and you can get really refined. I do that for lots of stuff, but for right now I think we're good. The only other thing we need to contend with is like the hole that's over here. So now we want to plus, so we want to add to, yeah, there's a problem area there. It's got to go way down, I can see that. So we'll sample at like 3 pixel value. Let's see if that helps. Yeah, it does actually. Yeah. Okay, well I would solve that by continuing to deal with it, or I would paint it out. I'm going to go ahead and just take one more stab at it. Yeah, see, there's something about those values that they're just too much the same. So I'll show you how to deal with that in just a second, but because there is a way to deal with that. Now I'm going to invert this, and then I'm going to go into Refine Edge. And now I can look at this and I'm like, wow, this looks not too bad. But I can see that this looks a little, choppy on the edges here. So this is a good use of like, let's make it soft. Let's try to smoothen out those edges a little bit. So we'll take the smooth edge. And then the shift edge, I'm probably going to just bring that in a little bit. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and cut that by doing Command X, or you could do copy as well if you wanted to. And then, whoops, don't save. And then we'll come over here to our Photoshop background. We are going to Control V. So as you can see, now I've pasted this irregular shape on top. Now to get this kind of look that I have up there, again, I can adjust how these are overlaid. I think in that case, I believe that I used a soft light, and then I think I reduced the opacity as well. Something like that. Something like that. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I think it's pretty similar. Okay, so the other thing is I still have this little area right near the handle that I'm mad at, that I want to get rid of. So I'll go to the erase tool, and I'm going to take the size of that brush way down, and then I'm just going to come out and I'm just going to erase it. And then what I do is I just hold down the Shift key and I just erase. I just sort of like do a point-to-point erase and just get rid of whatever needs to be gotten rid of in there. Actually, what I did with this was I used, and this is a technique that people use a lot, you take the erase tool, you size it up quite a lot, maybe 139, about that size. And then what you can do is you can do like some very soft erases for like kind of more blending. So for example, I'm using the erase tool on the basket, and I'm erasing, 42% at a time. But as you can see, that really is making that basket, just continue to blend into the background. And let's say I want to force that basket to look like it's behind this horizon line. Pretty easy to do that. Okay, cool. Let's look at a couple of other things before we go. Okay, this is just a lovely, sorry guys, there. This is a lovely, what do you call those, dream catcher. I was just really taken by that. Let's see if we can find the dream catcher, and let's take a look at how we might have done the dream catcher. Gee, I'm wondering if it's in here. Sorry guys, I'm just looking for the dream catcher and I don't for some reason see it, which is sad. Maybe it's here. Well, I don't see it, but hopefully you can tell the dream catcher. Let's turn everything else off for just a second, and there. So the dream catcher again is very much imaged in the same way. It is just it's laid on. You can even see the edges here a little bit. So in this case, I laid it over and I said to apply it using darken, which did a really nice job of just blending it into the background. And then I just took the erase tool and I just erased a little bit of it down here so that it blended just a little bit nicer. Now we have the Native American. This is, okay, so one thing we want to do here is we want to, let's make sure that we're on that layer. And again, I am placing this on with a low opacity. So this is what it looks like at 100% opacity. So I first of all reduced its opacity down because I don't want it to overpower anything. And then I said apply this using darken. So now let's take a look. So that's how you kind of get that effect that, that you've got sort of just the hint of the face and not the full face. Now the next thing I put in was this really nifty design that I found. It's kind of a Cherokee design. I just thought it looked really cool. So what I did there, again, let's look at the whole thing. Let's see what that Cherokee design looks like. So that's being laid on at 16%. So that's what it looks like at full percent. So as you can see, I'm using an overlay, right? And I'm using an overlay at 30, 30, whatever it was, 16 or 17, whatever. The last thing that I'll show you is the text. So Photoshop just does a really excellent job with text. So this is the case of, I think I called this Cherokee story. Let's put some text on. Let's call that text. And again, I'm using Trajan Pro, which I've been using. That's the text style that I'm using, that and Helvetica for the whole project across every piece of software. That's what I'm using. Let's go ahead and size this up to like 72. And so that's not too bad. That looks fine. But when the fun comes is when you look at these blending options over here. And I think this just gets like, I just get carried away with this stuff because I just think it looks so cool. So what we want to do is we're going to do an outer glow, for example. And let's take the spread out. So you're starting to see the glow. And this time, let's actually increase the spread, make the size larger. So you can do stuff like that, you know, to really sort of emphasize the text, which I think looks great half the time. You can do pattern overlays, like if I wanted to fill that thing with like a pattern, you can make a pattern if you want to. It's just crazy what you can do. And then there's inner glows, there's shadows and things like that, drop shadows. Let's just do then a simple drop shadow. So now we have, you know, we can make that size, whatever size we want to. You know, so you can do all kinds of really nifty stuff with text. You can actually use the text itself, and you can use that as a mask and paste things into it. I think what's really important about Photoshop is that you think of it as the thing that sort of does the matte painting. It's the tool that you want the artist in your group working with. Or if you have two artists in your group, you know, they should be on Photoshop probably. You know, you're more technically minded person, the person that, like, you know, in secret wants to be a programmer, that person you'd put on Flash. And then the person who's kind of like this, you know, thinks in a structural way of like, how does the flow of the whole thing go? You know, that's kind of the user interface / designer. That person should probably work in Illustrator. I think if you split up like that, you'd be in really good shape. Okay, thanks guys.